Communities along the freshwater Mississippi River are facing a growing threat from an intrusion of saltwater from the Gulf.
Cracks discovered in the bed of the Mississippi River have triggered a rare and serious red alert from the United States Geological Survey USGS, signaling a potentially significant geophysical event in one of the nation's most vital waterways. The implications of such a discovery stretch far beyond local concerns, reaching into the realms of national infrastructure, hydrological stability, seismic risk, and even economic vulnerability. The Mississippi River, long considered the lifeblood of American commerce and ecology, now finds itself at the center of a growing geological mystery, one that could ripple across every aspect of life along its extensive path. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The Mississippi River, stretching over 2,300 miles from northern Minnesota to the Gulf of Mexico, is a major artery for North America. It carries not just water, but an immense volume of freight, sediment, nutrients, and economic significance. Its basin supports millions of people and thousands of communities. So when USGS instruments began detecting abnormalities in pressure, flow, and subsurface movement near several monitoring stations along the lower Mississippi, particularly in the region south of Memphis and north of Baton Rouge, alarm bells started ringing. What initially seemed like a localized anomaly turned into a coordinated series of readings showing progressive subsidence and structural deformation beneath the riverbed. Subsequent investigations using sonar, ground-penetrating radar, and remote sensing drones confirmed what no one wanted to believe: significant and active cracking in the bed of the river, some extending hundreds of meters in length. What makes this discovery especially troubling is the nature of these cracks. They are not simple fissures caused by erosion or natural scouring, common in riverbeds with heavy flow and sediment transport. Instead, the cracks appear to form a branching, interconnected network, consistent with deeper tectonic activity or subsurface destabilization. Geologists believe that this might not merely be a product of surface hydrodynamics, but rather a symptom of stresses deep below the Earth's crust. The Mississippi sits atop one of the most seismically silent yet historically volatile regions in the continental United States, the New Madrid seismic zone. Though largely dormant for nearly 2 centuries, this zone was the epicenter of the massive 1811 to 1812 earthquake series, which violently reshaped the landscape and even caused the Mississippi to flow backward temporarily. That memory still haunts geological discussions, and the current situation has reignited fears that a new period of seismic instability may be underway. The Red Alert designation is a protocol that triggers immediate and escalated monitoring, preparation for potential disaster scenarios, and coordination with local, state, and federal agencies. The USGS, in issuing this status, is signaling that the situation is actively developing and could evolve into something far more dangerous than a structural failure in a riverbed. One of the primary concerns is that these cracks may weaken the river's natural channel, increasing the likelihood of avulsions, sudden shifts in the river's course. Such an event could have catastrophic consequences. If the Mississippi were to carve out a new path through lower terrain, especially during a period of high water flow, it could inundate entire towns, destroy farmlands, and cripple commercial navigation for months, if not years. Hydrologists and engineers are now grappling with what this discovery means for the Mississippi's flow integrity. The river is not only a natural watercourse, it is a highly managed and engineered system. A complex array of levees, spillways, locks, and dams controls its movements, preventing flooding and enabling transportation. Any shift in the foundational bedrock or sedimentary structure beneath the river threatens this delicate balance. Cracks at depth can lead to subsidence, erosion acceleration, and the formation of sinkholes or underground voids that collapse unexpectedly. These possibilities could endanger not only vessels navigating the river, but also critical infrastructure along its banks, such as oil refineries, water treatment plants, and power stations. The implications extend beyond geological concerns. The Mississippi River is a crucial conduit for agricultural exports. Grains, soybeans, and corn move downriver from the Midwest to ports along the Gulf Coast. A disruption in this system would have immediate economic impacts, potentially triggering commodity price spikes, export delays, and downstream effects on global food supply chains. Already, logistics companies and barge operators are reporting rerouting concerns and fuel cost increases. Insurance markets are beginning to adjust their risk profiles, and shipping contracts are being re-evaluated to account for possible navigation hazards and delays. Moreover, ecological experts are raising alarms about the potential for long-term environmental damage. The river supports a rich web of biodiversity, from migratory birds and fish to wetland flora and fauna. Any destabilization of its bed and banks could result in habitat destruction, increased sediment loading, and changes to nutrient cycling. The risk of chemical spills also looms large, especially if cracking causes any disturbance to buried pipelines or storage facilities located near vulnerable sections of the river. Even slight breaches could release hazardous substances into the water, endangering ecosystems hundreds of miles downstream. The scientific community is now mobilizing with urgency. Teams from the USGS, NOAA, Army Corps of Engineers, and several academic institutions have deployed monitoring equipment along the affected stretch of river. Sensors are being embedded into the bedrock and along the banks to detect movement, stress changes, and seismic tremors. High-resolution satellite imagery is being analyzed for patterns of land deformation. There is also an increase in aerial surveillance and boat-based sonar mapping to track the evolution of the cracks in real time. The scale and complexity of the operation suggest that this is not a minor anomaly, but a potentially transformative geological event. There is also concern about the role of human activity in this development. The Mississippi River has been heavily modified over the last century. Channel straightening, dredging, dam construction, and industrial expansion have all altered the natural behavior of the river. In some regions, groundwater withdrawal and oil extraction have contributed to land subsidence, reducing the Earth's ability to resist structural failure. Climate change, with its accompanying extremes in rainfall and drought, has further stressed the river system. In recent years, the region has experienced both unprecedented flooding and unusually low water levels, each putting unique strain on the river's geomorphology. These cumulative pressures may have reached a tipping point, manifesting now in the form of deep structural cracks. If the underlying cause is indeed tectonic, the implications are even more profound. The reactivation of fault lines beneath the Mississippi River would not only threaten the river itself, but could also pose a broader seismic hazard to millions of people living in the surrounding region. Cities like Memphis, St. Louis, and even distant Nashville could be affected if a major earthquake were to occur. Infrastructure such as bridges, highways, pipelines, and railways are not uniformly designed to withstand seismic activity of the kind that could emerge from this zone. Emergency preparedness plans are now being reviewed, and disaster simulations are underway in multiple states to assess how regional governments might respond if the situation escalates. Yet even without a major seismic event, the mere presence of these cracks is cause for serious concern. Over time, they could evolve into larger structural failures or trigger new sedimentary movements that block or reroute river flow. During periods of high discharge, especially in spring when snowmelt and rainfall converge, weakened zones in the riverbed could erode rapidly. This would amplify flooding potential in both urban and rural areas, many of which are already vulnerable due to aging levee systems and inadequate floodplain management. Communities along the river are beginning to feel the pressure of uncertainty. Although the USGS has not advised evacuations, the red alert status is prompting local leaders to review evacuation routes, stock emergency supplies, and coordinate with state-level emergency management agencies. Schools, hospitals, and businesses near the riverbanks are quietly revising their contingency plans. There is a growing sense that something unprecedented may be unfolding, something that could shift the way Americans understand their relationship to one of the continent's most iconic natural features. The timing of this discovery also intersects with broader national discussions around infrastructure resilience and climate adaptation. As policymakers debate trillions of dollars in investments into roads, bridges, energy grids, and water systems. The Mississippi's instability underscores the urgency of those conversations. Geological changes do not respect political timelines or fiscal calendars. They occur with or without human readiness. This event serves as a stark reminder that beneath even the most familiar landscapes lie dynamic forces capable of sudden transformation. Meanwhile, the USGS continues to work with urgency, analyzing the mechanics of the cracking and exploring possible mitigation strategies. In some cases, it may be possible to inject grout into subsurface cavities or construct underwater barriers to stabilize vulnerable segments. But such interventions are complex, costly, and may only offer temporary reprieve if the underlying forces are tectonic in nature. The scientific data is still evolving, and many variables remain unknown. What is clear, however, is that the cracks in the Mississippi riverbed are more than a geological curiosity. They represent a potential pivot point in the river's long and storied history. With so much at stake, from human safety to environmental integrity and economic continuity, the nation watches closely. Scientists delve deeper, engineers assess risk, and communities along the Mississippi brace for what may come. The river has always been a symbol of both power and unpredictability. Now, more than ever, that duality is being tested. While the initial shock of the USGS red alert drew attention to the raw geological threat, it's what follows next that demands an even deeper look. The discovery of cracks in the Mississippi riverbed marks not just a physical disturbance beneath the surface, but a conceptual disturbance in how the nation manages and perceives its natural systems. The Mississippi has long been engineered, monitored, and mapped with the illusion of complete understanding and control. The emerging evidence of deep and unanticipated faulting challenges that illusion in dramatic fashion. The cracks represent not only physical fissures in sediment and rock, but also metaphorical fissures in the confidence of river management and geophysical predictability. This scenario also places a spotlight on data interpretation and the limitations of current monitoring practices. Although the Mississippi River is one of the most studied waterways in the United States, much of the technology deployed over the decades has been focused on surface-level measurements, water height, flow velocity, sediment transport, and navigation channel depth. Only in the last decade has there been greater integration of subsurface imaging and deep earth stress monitoring technologies. The cracks caught on these newer instruments suggest that what lies beneath might be far more dynamic than previously assumed. The geophysical data gathered so far imply that these cracks may originate well below sedimentary layers, possibly tied to basement rock deformation. A fact that places the focus squarely on the tectonic characteristics of the region rather than superficial erosion. The implications for long-term river stability go hand in hand with the unknowns of how such subsurface dynamics will interact with hydrology over time. If pressure differentials begin to change water flow direction underground, forming new seepage paths or expanding internal voids, then entire sections of the river could become susceptible to collapse or redirection. Groundwater mixing, often overlooked in river systems this large, could become a destabilizing factor, particularly if aquifers are breached or contaminated by shifting underground flows. These scenarios raise valid concerns about drinking water supplies for communities downstream that rely on shallow wells or river filtration systems. From a logistical standpoint, immediate steps are now being taken to assess transportation risk. The Mississippi River is a superhighway of commerce, with thousands of barges, tankers, and support vessels moving up and down its channel on a weekly basis. Any underlying instability poses a hidden threat to navigation. What if one of these cracks, invisible at the surface, opens up into a void that collapses beneath a passing barge? Not only would such an incident risk lives, but it could also block shipping lanes and release fuel or cargo into the water. Port authorities are conducting sonar sweeps and risk assessments, especially in areas where traffic density is high. Temporary rerouting and traffic restrictions have already been proposed in the most vulnerable zones, potentially slowing delivery schedules and raising costs for suppliers and consumers alike. This evolving event also brings renewed urgency to the question of interagency coordination. Natural disasters often reveal gaps between federal, state, and local responses. The Mississippi River runs through or borders 10 U.S. states, each with varying levels of resources, emergency preparedness, and technical expertise. While the USGS and Army Corps of Engineers bring federal oversight and expertise, the reality on the ground requires the cooperation of state environmental agencies, transportation departments, and emergency response teams. Right now, coordination is under strain as data flows rapidly and decisions must be made in real time. Systems for emergency communication, mapping vulnerabilities, and issuing localized warnings are being stress tested like never before. As the cracks are studied further, new investigative threads are opening that hint at broader geological complexity. Some researchers are exploring the possibility that these cracks are part of a reactivation process tied to ancient faults dating back hundreds of millions of years. The Mississippi Valley has a long tectonic history, shaped during the breakup of ancient supercontinents. There are deeply buried rift systems and shear zones that, although dormant for vast stretches of time, still contain latent stress. Even small amounts of modern stress, whether from glacial rebound, human activity, or fluid injection, could theoretically awaken segments of these ancient structures. If this is happening now, the event is not only a hazard, but also an extraordinary scientific opportunity to understand how ancient geological forces continue to shape the present. Research teams are also probing the relationship between atmospheric phenomena and subsurface stress. Some believe that extreme weather, particularly the kind associated with intense atmospheric rivers, droughts, and flash floods, might play a role in accelerating crustal strain. Rainfall that saturates the landscape to the point of overburden weight could conceivably influence fault mechanics, especially when paired with rapid drawdowns from drought. The Mississippi Basin has seen dramatic hydrological swings in recent years, including 500-year floods and record-low water levels. The alternating pressures exerted on the river's bedrock could, in theory, nudge already stressed fault lines closer to failure thresholds. This line of inquiry, still controversial, is gaining traction in geophysical circles. Social dynamics are another layer in this complex situation. River communities, from industrial hubs like Baton Rouge to smaller agricultural towns in Missouri, are built around the assumption of predictability. The river floods, the river recedes, barges arrive and depart. Fields are planted and harvested. This rhythm has persisted for generations. The sudden introduction of geophysical instability threatens that rhythm in deep ways. There's anxiety in the air, even if officials have not yet called for evacuations or closures. People are quietly reviewing insurance policies, checking basements for seepage, and asking questions about the safety of their drinking water. Farmers worry about the possibility of their irrigation channels becoming unusable. Parents wonder about the structural safety of schools built near the river's edge. The psychological impact, while subtle at this stage, could deepen if visible changes begin to manifest on the surface. Further complicating matters is the potential for political response and miscommunication. A red alert of this nature is rare and can be subject to varied interpretations by different stakeholders. Some may see it as a call for aggressive intervention, deploying resources, halting operations, and preparing for disaster. Others may seek to downplay the threat to protect local economies and prevent panic. This tension between precaution and continuity is playing out behind closed doors. Local officials face the difficult task of balancing transparency with reassurance, especially when scientific data is evolving by the hour, and no one can yet say for sure how the cracks will progress. Insurance and liability are also becoming pressing issues. Should a major failure occur, whether it's a landslide into the river, a structural collapse, or even an industrial spill, questions will quickly arise about who knew what and when. Were the cracks predictable? Were the monitoring systems adequate? Did local industries or municipalities contribute to the risk through construction or extraction practices? These questions are already being anticipated by legal teams, insurance investigators, and environmental compliance officers. Future lawsuits could hinge on the decisions being made right now, as officials interpret the meaning of the red alert and decide what actions are necessary. From a technological standpoint, this crisis is accelerating innovation. Several private companies that specialize in deep earth sensing, AI modeling of fault behavior, and satellite imaging analytics have been contracted to contribute to the response. Real-time modeling platforms are being deployed to simulate possible outcomes, ranging from minor structural changes to full-scale avulsions or collapses. These models require enormous data input, from rock composition profiles to river velocity gradients, but they offer something invaluable: scenario prediction. If one section of the river were to collapse or shift, where would the water go? How would that affect levee integrity downstream? What towns are in the flood path? These simulations are informing the development of contingency plans and structural reinforcements. On the subject of reinforcements, engineers are exploring both hard and soft approaches. On the hard engineering side, they are evaluating whether emergency buttressing, such as underwater concrete pouring, can stabilize the most vulnerable sections. Divers and remotely operated underwater vehicles (ROVs) are being used to assess whether these solutions are feasible given current water conditions. On the soft side, attention is turning to natural systems. Wetlands restoration, floodplain expansion, and managed retreat are being proposed as long-term strategies to relieve pressure on the river's structure. These approaches, while less dramatic, aim to restore the river's natural resilience rather than fight against it. There is also a growing interest in understanding the cultural history embedded in the Mississippi's behavior. Indigenous communities along the river have oral histories describing times when the river changed course, swallowed forests, or created new land masses seemingly overnight. Anthropologists and historians are now working alongside geologists to piece together these narratives and compare them to current scientific data. These ancient stories may hold insights that modern instrumentation cannot yet uncover. They may also provide cultural frameworks for understanding how to coexist with an unpredictable natural system, rather than attempting to dominate or freeze it in a static state. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on the cracks found in the Mississippi riverbed? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.